Welcome to Get Into the Act. I'm your host, John Berg, with the Sacramento County Office of Education. Get Into the Act is a series of video presentations brought to you by the California Department of Education's Middle and High School Improvement Office. Renowned educators who are passionate about student learning and achievement will share research-based strategies to help middle grades teachers ensure success and close the achievement gap for their students. Each presentation focuses on one or more of the 12 Taking Center Stage Act 2 recommendations. Dr. Janet Zadina is a cognitive neuroscientist, reading specialist, and former high school and community college instructor. She received her doctorate in the College of Education at the University of New Orleans, conducting her award-winning dissertation research on the neuroanatomy of dyslexia through collaboration with Tulane University School of Medicine. She continued her postdoctoral education with a fellowship in cognitive neuroscience in the Department of Psychiatry and Neurology at Tulane University School of Medicine. She is currently engaged in neuroscience research as an assistant professor in cognitive neuroscience in the Department of Psychiatry and Neurology at Tulane and in psychology at the University of South Florida. Dr. Zadina is author of 6 Weeks to a Brain-Compatible Classroom, a workbook for educators, and is also the founder of Brain Research and Instruction. This is the fourth and final session of a 4-part series of videos by Dr. Janet Zadina. In this video segment, Dr. Zadina will be focusing on incorporating multiple methods for learning and assessment based on brain research.
Welcome to Get Into the Act. I'm Dr. Janet Zadina, a cognitive neuroscientist and former English and reading teacher who specializes in helping educators understand the new research on the brain and learning. This is the last in a series of 4 videos that I've presented. In the first video, we looked at the brain and learning overall. In videos 2 and 3, we looked at 4 characteristics of adolescence and what the brain research tells us about them, and some recommendations from the Taking Center Stage Act 2 website. Today, we're going to get more practical. We're going to look at what this means in the classroom. And so, we're going to talk about multiple methods for learning and assessment. There are many recommendations on the Taking Center Stage Act 2 website that give you ideas about what to do in many ways to offer multiple methods for learning and assessment. I'd like to talk first about why it's so important and then give you some ideas. It's very important that we offer students many options for showing us what they can do, for working with the material, for demonstrating their knowledge of the material. And it's important for 3 reasons. The first is we are probably all wired differently. I wish I had time today to talk about all the kinds of differences in the brain, but suffice it to say, you can be pretty sure that all of your students are processing the information a little bit differently. And we want to reach as many learners as we can. So we're going to have to offer a variety of strategies, and I'm going to help you understand why. The second reason that I'd like to see us offer multiple methods is so that students can find a passion. It's very important that students find something that they are interested in, and we're going to talk about that. The third reason is so that a student can find his or her strengths. Let's look at these. The reasons that students need a passion, something that they're interested in, is first of all that it drives their learning. Sometimes you've heard college students say, I still don't know what I'm going to major in. I met one the other day and she still doesn't know. That's because they have not found their interest, anything that drives their learning. They're kind of still going through the motions of going to school. I know a scientist who was an English major until his senior year, when a science course changed everything, and he went to graduate school in science. I'd like to see students find their interest a little sooner than that. Research shows that finding a passionate interest is one of the ways that students can compensate for deficits, particularly dyslexia. When I was doing my dyslexia research, I looked at the literature on compensation, which was almost non-existent. But one study did show that students who were able to compensate for dyslexia were those students who had a driving interest, because that drove them to read and to struggle with their reading and to learn. Having a passion enables students to learn as they pursue their passion. Let's say a student is only interested in cars or NASCAR or dinosaurs or bugs or whatever, but when they read, they come across a lot of new vocabulary and new concepts, and there's some transfer to other subjects. So they are learning how to learn, and they're learning new information, and they're developing some self-esteem about their learning. But to pursue a passion, you first have to find a passion or a strong interest. So we're going to talk about how to do that in just a minute. I'd like to discuss the third reason that it's important to offer multiple methods in the classroom, and that is for students to be able to find a strength. You know, a child can arrive in middle school poor at everything, and they may have already written themselves off as a loser and say, I'm not good in school. A friend of mine told me that her 9-year-old was bad at everything in school. I said, she can't be bad at everything. So we started naming things, and it turns out that they didn't offer anything but reading, writing, and arithmetic in school. So maybe she would have been good at the arts or music or gymnastics or some kind of sports, but she didn't have that option. So as far as she was concerned, she was bad at everything in school. You know, if you know a little bit about the brain, you would understand why it's possible that somebody could be poor at all the early skills and then brilliant at some of the skills that we don't get to till later in life. Early skills are processed in a similar part of the brain, and they require similar kinds of tasks and processes. But for example, high order math versus arithmetic, that's something totally different. And a student who might be poor at arithmetic might be better at the kind of thinking skills involved in higher order math. So we have to be careful at this time that a child doesn't write him or herself off at this early age and head down that path to dropping out of school. Schools must offer enough options that a student can find his or her strength. Not all gifts show up in school. There are many talents and skills that people pay very well for in life that don't show up in school. Maybe a discerning eye, a discerning ear, a discerning palate. Talents that we don't see in the classroom. But the students might not get to that point if they write themselves off, disengage, or drop out. We need opportunities for students to experience non-academic attributes in the classroom as well. You know, sometimes great strengths come with great deficits. It's almost as if it were a skewed bell curve. And sometimes people with a very great talent have corresponding deficits. This is not unusual. You know, there was a scientist in our lab, and she volunteered for the reading research. And when she did, she found out she had the word attack skills of a 3rd grader. Whoops. Well, she was already famous by then. She'd won one of the highest awards, well, the highest award given in behavioral neurology, the only woman ever to get it. But she was a compensated dyslexic. She had trouble sounding out non-words. Well, how did she write all these papers and do all this that made her famous? She compensated because of her love of learning and because she was taking courses now in medical school and the real world where words meant something. She didn't have to sound out non-words or sound out words that she'd never heard because the professors were saying the words, showing you the body part maybe in medical school. And when she would hear these words, then she would see them in the book and make the connection. So she compensated using her passionate interest, and she compensated in her reading by using maybe sight vocabulary that she picked up through hearing the words, and then she compensated through semantics, the context, and then transferred that to the reading. You know, we had another famous scientist come to our lab, and he had written 400 books and papers, and he had been told he had an IQ of 87. And we had to spell our names and he had to write them down. Because sometimes great strengths come with deficits. We are all a combination of strengths and weaknesses. What I wonder about is why we label students by their weakness instead of their strength. My concern is that they will get through school without discovering their strength, and therefore they'll write themselves off, drop out of school, and not find their strength. I know a famous actor, I'm not going to say his name because you'd know it, and he was told in school that you'll never amount to anything. Well, I think 200 movies and TV shows is something, don't you? But that talent didn't show up in a typical classroom or in his school. Luckily for him, when he took an art class, the art teacher told his mother that he was a genius. So that helped save that child. But what about the child who doesn't discover his or her strengths? We have to help them do that. Let's look at some ways that we can do that. What I would like to do, what I did in my class, was instead of a homework assignment, I offered them a homework menu. Now, not every time, but when possible and when it was effective. I would give them a choice of ways in which they could work with the knowledge. So they could either write a song, maybe, or find a song that, say, demonstrated say prepositions that included many prepositions, or write a song. They could sing it if they liked. They could use art. They could draw a cartoon, make a graphic, a comic book that illustrated the lesson, make some kind of a poster. Now I'm talking quality. Low quality is not one of the homework options. You still expect high quality work that's demonstrated in a different way. And if a student is going to pick art as, for example, the way to demonstrate what they've learned, they're probably good at it and they're going to put in a lot more effort. Let me give you an example of how that saved a student in one of my classes. There was a young man that nobody wanted to associate with. His appearance, his appearance and his behavior kind of set him apart, and in many ways by choice. And the other students didn't want him to be in their groups. And he didn't want to be in their group. So in order to protect him, I allowed him to work individually. And he turned in such a fabulous art project that he won the respect of the other students. And then they wanted him in their group after all. And he felt more bonded with them when he saw the respect. So that really turned that child around. They could use drama as one of the options. They could act out the lesson. They could build models, as I discussed in an earlier module. And of course, we always have the option for a language task. I know I would have rather written the essay than sing a song or draw something, that's for sure. And we always want to work with strengthening their weaknesses while we help them find and develop a strength. I think that it's just fair now and then to let a student use his strength or her strength to work with their weakness or to show you what they can do. We want to provide opportunities for extra help and for enrichment for the same student. For example, when I had to take the 5 advanced statistics classes in the doctoral program, I couldn't remember my algebra. So I had to go to the community college math lab and brush up on that so that I could work with the statistics. But I didn't have to be labeled anything. And that's what I like about the recommendations on the Taking Center Stage Act 2 website. They offer options for enrichment and for getting extra help. And sometimes my enrichment is your extra help and vice versa. But we can just go and get what we need and what we want. One recommendation on the website that I found very important is the exploratory wheel. This allows students to sample a variety of different content areas and skills, and maybe they'll find their interest, their passion, or a new strength they didn't know that they had. And this is in a very risk-free way because they're only sampling these different topics. So it's a great idea, and I encourage you to look at that. Of course, including the arts is very important because a student needs to be good at something in school. And if they're struggling in academic classes, I bet they have another talent somewhere. And maybe this is where it'll show up, is in the arts, in music or acting or drawing. And if they feel good about themselves, if they have a reason to come to school, they know they have a talent, they're going to hang in there. And they're going to learn the other things that they need so that they can pursue their talent when they get out of school. I've often mentioned the project-based learning. This is very important because a student gets to experience a variety of skills and strengths. When they work on a project, they can discover maybe that they're good at one part of the project and not the other. And you know, that's okay. So they might see that one person is better at creating the ideas and another person is better at the time management, and a couple of them are better at the skill itself, and everyone works together as a team. So while they're working on their weaknesses, they're also building their strengths. Service-based learning, service projects are very important because this gives the students another way to discover who they are. We know how important that is to adolescents, and to find an interest and a strength. Let's say, for example, the service project is going to an assisted living home and doing something for the elderly. A student who might not be doing well in school might discover that they have a gift for working with the elderly, that they like working with them and helping them and all the positive feedback they get from the people that they help. And as they look around this environment, they might say, well, you know, I'm not good at some of these things, but I'm compassionate, I'm kind, I'm patient, I'm good with people. And so they might say, you know, I could become an aide who helps take care of them. Or maybe I could become the occupational therapist or the physical therapist or the activities director. And they get to see a variety of ways that they could pursue their strengths or their interests. It's important to provide cross-curriculum opportunities because once again, not only are they making connections, as we discussed in video 1, but this gives the students another chance to use their strength to work with their weakness. I might not be good in your class, but I'm good in this class, and now you get to see that because we're working with the two courses combined. So you see that I also have some strengths, and that maybe we can find a way to use those strengths in your class. Always keep in mind, because our students are so different, and because the work must be in line with their characteristics and all the things that we've talked about, it must be meaningful, relevant, and based on real life. The website has much information about relevance. I would strongly encourage you to take a look at that. For all the things that I've talked about in these 4 videos, meaningful, relevant, based on real life. These things are very, very important with what we know about the brain and how it learns best. If you give students enough options for working with information and for demonstrating their knowledge, they can find their special interest and their special strength. I'd like to leave you with this question. In your next lesson, do you think maybe you could come up with 5 or 6 or maybe just 3 or 4 ways that a student could demonstrate what they have learned in that lesson or show you that they have understood the material? My dream for every middle school student is that by the end of the year, a student would be able to say 2 things. One is, I am really interested in this, and I am good at that. You are more powerful in your lives than you realize. There is no more important work than helping our children succeed. Thank you so much for watching these videos. Go out there and get into the act.
You've just seen Dr. Janet Zadina discuss incorporating multiple methods for learning and assessment based on brain research. To find more information and additional resources on this and related topics, go to pubs.cde.ca.gov/TCS2.